Well, good afternoon. Welcome to DMAC. Kind of like that title best. But anyway, we are anticipating that Andrew would be here, but we're going to get started on time. Matt, we've excused. He is in the process of building fire lines. His subdivision, Afton Lakes, was number 3 notice for 2.5 days. They're 2 now, but they're still building fire lines. So I'll meet with him, tell him what's happened here. And of course, he can watch the recording of this, but he's served on the Deschutes County Planning Council, so he's familiar with some of the things we're going to talk about today. I ask each of you to give us a few minutes of who you are, and so that with your other commission members, you understand your background and what your hopes are for this group. I'll begin. I am, and my wife came to Bend in 1973, 13,000 people, probably 35,000 in the county. And I joined the firm of Ray Fancher Homes in Hurley. And gradually over 45.5 years, that evolved into Bryant, Loveland, and Jarvis. The community, the county at that time was largely wood products. Brooks Scanlon was operating in the old mill district, and then a lot of agriculture, and then tourism was beginning. Sun River and Blackbeard Ranch had opened, and the law firm represented Sun River and Brooks Resources and Brooks Scanlon. So we were a business law firm, and did a lot of land use work and those sorts of things. Then on the individual level, at I think about 1980, I became president of the chamber for a year, formed EDCO, and then later chaired the Deschutes County Children and Families Commission, and worked on buying and establishing the Rosie Barris campus here in town and the Kids Center, which is a Rotary project. I was president of the Great Red Rotary Club and was one of the founders. On a statewide level in 1993, I decided I should run for the Oregon Senate. Here we go. You get a name tag first.
I gotta grab it now. Okay. Sorry, buddy.
This is Andrew, everybody. Welcome.
Thank you.
We've just begun. And I was elected, and at that time, the district included all of Deschutes County, all of Jefferson County, Warm Springs Indian Reservation, Northern Klamath County, and Southern Wasco County. So quite a bit different than the district today is, even not the entire Deschutes County because of the growth. I chaired Judiciary most of that time and served on the interim emergency board all 8 years I was in the Senate. And then in 2001, I quit. I had what I call political fatigue. I think my wife had political fatigue, my law firm had political fatigue, and so I just decided, and I've never run for another office since then. Although I did serve and share on the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, my interest there was all higher education. It coordinated both universities and community colleges, but I wanted to make sure that the Cascade campus would be built. The other things I did in the community was I chaired or co-chaired probably 3 or 4 of the Bend School District building bond measures. All of them passed. And then I was the chair on the GO bond and for the city in 2012, and that passed. The most interesting one was an advisory vote in 2003. For those who were here, remember the majority of the city council didn't want to build the Bill Healy Bridge, have a Centennial Park, and then reconnect to Reed Market. And so they said, we're going to do an advisory vote. And that took place in September, and I chaired the committee that was successful. I think we got 67% of the votes saying build it. The objection was that was the old log deck and leave it natural, don't have traffic and people down along the river. You can imagine what that would be like today if we didn't have it. So I have stayed active in the community. My kids graduated from Bend High. We have 6 grandchildren. youngest is 19 now and just returned for his sophomore year at Wake Forest, and the oldest is 33 and a doctor of physical therapy. But three of them graduated from Penn high schools, and the others were from Seattle, where our son is. So that's me. How I got involved in this was I was recruited. And one of the conditions, and Commissioner Jang is here, I said, well, I only do it if all three commissioners want me to do it. And so they said yes. So then I was stuck with doing it. But here I am. This is going to be interesting. And my goal is to find consensus. And I hope that everyone's open to what's best for Deschutes County. And it would be wonderful if we ended up with a 7-0 vote when it's time to submit our recommendation to the county commissioner. So that's my optimistic view of the world and what I hope to attain with your help, of course, because you vote and I don't. So that's who I am. And let's start with some other introductions right now. Nick, I saw you come in. All right.
Thank you. I'm sorry, a few minutes late, back-to-back meetings all day. I'm Nick Lilac. I'm the Deschutes County Administrator. Some people think what's the administrator? Well, I'm similar to the city manager with the city. The Board of Commissioners appoint me to implement their policy direction across the organization. I will have been in my position for 4 years come next week. But I've worked with Deschutes for Deschutes County since 2009, initially across the street in the Community Development Department, and first as Planning Director and then as Community Development Director. So
Happy anniversary.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I nearly 17 years with the organization and 4 years in this position. It's great. Previously, I worked with the city of Redmond. And I visited Central Oregon my whole life before moving here. So it's great to be here. Welcome and thank you to the committee members for serving. We're really pleased that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. I have Steve next. I'll go Dave. We'll do it in order.
I don't think I'm on the list anyway, but I figured I could escape out of this. I'm Dave Doyle. I'm the county attorney. This is my 32nd year as county counsel, 11 here and 21 in Polk County. Before that, I was a prosecutor and a civil litigator down in Southern California. And I'm here just to give a little bit of a overview on some of the public meeting rules. And then that'll probably be it. I don't plan that I'll be attending your meetings on a regular basis, but I'm here tonight for the first one.
Thank you.
Yep.
Steve Benson, Deschutes County Clerk. I just reached 4 years as county clerk, and prior to that I was here in the office working for Nancy Blankenship for 4 years as well. I have over 20 years, almost 25 years in experience in elections and a variation of roles. But that has led me to have been involved with 3 rounds of redistricting, which is there's some comparable skills with that will come with this conversation. Happy to be a part. I'm here in support as the clerk. So as we do run elections, of course, and we're keeping precinct boundaries and other areas in mind, I'd like to be part of that conversation. So appreciate being a part. Nancy Blankenship, my predecessor, county clerk for 18 years, is also a part of this this working group that has helped facilitate getting the thing set up. She couldn't be here tonight. She is retired and she's on vacation as a retiree. So, but she may be here in future meetings. But before I pass it over to Jen, I just wanted to say there's been a lot of work that has gotten this committee and group to this place, and it really couldn't have been done without the hard work of Jen Patterson. So I'll pass it to Jen, but to acknowledge her role in getting us to where we are, but to hand the reins off to you guys is it's been quite an undertaking by Jen.
Thanks, Steve.
Jen is back from vacation today, so.
I know that midnight last night, so happy to be here today. I'm Jen Patterson. I'm the Strategic Initiatives Manager for Deschutes County. I've been in this role since August 1st. August 1st was my 3-year mark. Prior to that, I have worked for elected officials for the last 20 years. Most recently before that, doing congressional affairs for FEMA, and then political consulting for elected officials all over the country. So very happy to be in this role for the county, supporting the commissioners and committee work here. For the intents and purposes of this DMAC group, you know, I'm here to help provide any kind of logistical support, technical support. Not great with it, but I can definitely connect you with the right ones. I know I had some conversations prior to this meeting started about needing help with some emails and stuff like that. So I can be a resource for you in that department, and, you know, we'll be here at this meeting to provide any kind of staff support for Neil and the rest of the committee.
I'm Kim Catcher. I'm the Public Information Officer for Deschutes County. I've been here for about 1.5 years. I have a background in broadcast media and several years in government. I worked in Maricopa County and the Arizona Department of Transportation. I'll be here to just support as far as media relations go. I'll be writing press releases, that kind of thing, so.
Hello, I'm Lee Klemp. My title is Applications Analyst. I work here in the IT department where I provide support for our mapping systems and its users. I have 20+ years experience working in mapping, analysis, and data management. And my role here is to provide real-time mapping support to this committee, where we'll be using mapping software to view data, run statistics, interact with maps, and visualize different map scenarios for potential consideration.
Thank you.
Phil. Hello, everyone. I'm Phil Chi. I'm a longtime Bend resident, and I've been working for the Deschutes County for 3 months now as a GIS analyst. And my role here will be to provide backup support for the committee if Lee is unavailable for some reason.
Okay, now we'll go around the table and hear from each of the commissioners. We'll start with Ned.
Well, you starting with me.
Just fun to pick on.
I'm Ned Dempsey. I'm an engineer. I was born and raised in Kansas. And if you've ever been to Kansas, you know how everybody lives in Oregon. I went to school at Nebraska, graduate school in San Jose, worked for an engineering firm in San Francisco. 1971, Bill Smith recruited me to help design Blackbeat Ranch in 1971. So I've been working here since 1971. I moved here in 1973 and bought the firm Century West Resources at that time, became Century West Engineering. And I was the only engineer. That's why they changed the name. But then we were able to get the Bend sewer job, which was a major job. Put 85 miles of pipe in town and a new treatment plant, and spent $80 million of federal money. So in 1977, so
That was real money then.
it was real money then. We beat the budget, we beat the schedule, and we didn't get any lawsuits, so we didn't have to use your services. So. And since then, I've continued to build the company. I bought the company from the original owners in 1974. And the company now is regional. It's got 10 or 11 offices around the region. Does airports and infrastructure for cities. And I've done hundreds of jobs in Deschutes County, so including the wastewater system that we do airports. We're doing Bend's Airport now. On a statewide basis, like you mentioned, I was chair of Oregon's Futures Commission, which was charged with developing a map of the future for Oregon, which was not exactly easy. And I was also a chair of Oregon's Climate Change Commission, and I was on Oregon Business Council. I was chair of their sustainability board, and I was a 2-time member of Oregon's sustainability board. So I'm retired. I have 2 kids born and raised here in Bend, 4 grandkids, 2 of them here and 2 of them in Seattle. So I've just been here a long time. I'm older than all the rest of you guys. And I've been in every corner of this county and worked for almost everybody. So, and I love the county. It's been good to me, and hopefully I can give back some value here. I'm not sure exactly what I expect out of this, but that's up to you, Neil. So.
I'm sure you'll be helpful.
I hope so.
Andrew.
Yeah, hi. I'm Andrew Kaza, and I am a Redmond resident since 2018. My wife and I bought the Sisters Movie House and Cafe in 2016. And so relocated here actually from the United Kingdom in 2015, 2016, after spending close to 25 years over there. I was born in Beaverton, or born in Portland, grew up in Beaverton, but left Oregon back in 1987. Always with a view of getting back at some point. I've had home on the coast for a number of years, but also always wanted to get to the dry side of the state from the time I was about 12 or so when I first visited over here when I was probably 1970, 71, when you started doing all your stuff here. Was really delighted to be able to find a business we could invest in and settle here in the county. And we actually lived in Bend the first couple of years after we bought the theater. We were renting, then we bought a place up in Redmond. Politically, I have been involved with the Independent Party of Oregon for a number of years, really since the party's inception, going back to 2008, because some of the people that are involved with that party were also involved in the first, or maybe the second or third effort to bring campaign finance reform to Oregon through a couple of ballot measures in 2006. So even as I was living abroad, I was trying to help out with that effort. And so I've been involved with the Independent Party for a long time. I've been a co-chair of the Independent Party now for, I think, the last 6 or 7 years. And in the interest of full disclosure, I was one of the chief petitioners in Deschutes County to make the county commission nonpartisan several years ago. Even though there were some people in the Independent Party who said, "Why are you doing that? We're partisan. We should keep the party labels going." And I said, "Well, I think at the county level, nonpartisan is the way to go." Anyway, I'm delighted to be part of this. Having been involved a little bit with some work a few years ago from some folks who want to bring citizens redistricting efforts to the state of Oregon. That was an effort that got curtailed a little bit by COVID. There was an effort to try to bring a ballot measure forward back with the last census in 2020. So I'm somewhat familiar with the issues at a macro level. And I think this is really important work for the county, and so happy to be involved with the group that we've got here. So
Thank you. Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks. So I'm Melanie Keebler. I'm an attorney. I'm currently serving as the mayor of Bend. And my history is we moved here when I was little. I grew up in Bend, graduated from Bend High. So Bend is my home that I've now returned to after a number of years, but went to college in Michigan. Sorry, Tony's not here, so I can shout out us Michigan folks, and went to law school in Portland at Lewis and Clark, and then took my first job as a prosecutor for Lincoln County, living in Newport, Oregon. Also did some prosecuting in McMinnville, Oregon, and my career was focused on prosecuting domestic violence and sexual abuse, working with victims of crime. After that, I moved to a nonprofit called the Oregon Crime Victims Law Center, where I again was working directly with victims of crime to uphold their rights and help them through the criminal justice process. Had the opportunity to move over to Bend as part of that job in 2018, and then got involved with the local community and was elected to the city council in 2020, and then elected to mayor in 2022. So I'm now in the third year of my first term as mayor. And I'm here to represent the people of Bend. I am a member of the Democratic Party, but my focus in this group is going to be around the voice of the folks in Bend. And I think some of the lenses I'm bringing to that, that I think is important when talking about governance, is actually the issues that are important to folks. And we know in Bend, from my time on the council and the surveys and talking to constituents and the results from elections, the number one issue in Bend is affordability, especially housing, cost of living, concerns about homelessness. Also top issues are congestion, infrastructure, all of those things. So the lens I'm bringing to this is making sure that when we are changing the way fundamentally that governance at the county is going to work, that we are grounding ourselves in what is actually important to our communities, that our representatives are going to be able to tackle, and creating a governance structure that's actually going to be able to happen, and be representative of especially those folks in my city, is my perspective, but of the whole county and how we can all move forward. So my hope for this meeting is to learn a little bit more about why we are doing this very significant process, why we're doing it now, and what the guardrails are for this group. I hope that this group has some freedom to suggest solutions beyond just one narrow path, because I think that would do a disservice to our community if we weren't able to think about some different ideas and ways to move forward that will result in real representation for everyone in the county. So that's what I'm hoping to hear more of today as we get started, and that's sort of the lens I'll be bringing to this group.
Thank you.
No, I don't think mine is going to be quite as impressive as everybody else. But anyway, I moved here to Bend 8 years ago from Valparaiso, Indiana. People ask why. It's because the grandchild is in Portland and I didn't want to live in Portland. And he always thought I was the cool grandma. And I thought if I lived around the block, I might not be that cool grandma anymore. I grew up in Southern Illinois in a farming community, married my high school sweetheart, ended up in Valparaiso, Indiana, where he finished his undergraduate and law degree. He started our first business there, and so we stayed there for the next 45 years. Owning small businesses gave me the opportunity to participate in the community. I became very involved in the League of Women Voters and also in various volunteer opportunities. So I've worked with everybody from juvenile delinquents to domestic violence to chairing our regional mental health facility to homeless. So I have a very save the world background, but I was a child of the 60s and I think I still am. I am probably the token non-affiliated here. I strongly believe in being non-affiliated. Going back to my time in Valparaiso, I had two friends, a Republican and a Democrat, a county councilwoman and a county commissioner. They got into an argument over which party I belonged to. So I think that I've done a really good job of maintaining my non-affiliation. The other thing, I am currently still employed. I work part-time for a company here in town that builds climbing walls as an accounting assistant, which means I do everything that the CFO doesn't want to do. My job here is to make sure that my goal maybe is to make sure that this is fair and impartial and that all the citizens are represented.
Thank you, Carol.
Sure.
Bernie.
Bernard Brader from Lapine. We moved here 21 years ago from a part of Los Angeles that nobody's ever heard of, Sunlit Tahunga. It's, don't even blink, still on septic tanks and had snakes going down the street, but it's part of LA. It's up in the hills. I was in the Air Force for four years, was trained in sewage plants and drinking water plants. When I got out, I found a whole other field. It was called industrial water treatment. So for the next 40 years, I tested boilers, cooling towers, pollution monitoring, compliance testing. As the rules changed, we had to change. We had I worked for two different companies. A lot of our business with aerospace and the studios. We had smaller things like high rises. Everything changed over the years. I've been the president of the Ponderosa Mountain Men and the Lapine RC Flyers for the last 15 years. Excuse me. I've been on the board of directors for Lapine Frontier Days for a little over that. My whole family is here, son, daughter-in-law, 5 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. And when we first moved up here, my son had a restaurant in Lapine and he says, Dad, washing dishes is like water treatment. So I was volunteering for the next 14 years to work for free. But now I get to eat for free. Me and my wife both get to eat for free after 14 years of washing dishes for free. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Bernie. Bill.
So my name is Phil Henderson. I was born in Portland, grew up in Hood River. My family's been there a long time, from the 1800s. I went to school there, got somewhat involved in politics there. One of my best friends' father was a state senator there, Ken Jernstedt, who was one of the longest serving. He's a war hero from Flying Tiger in the World War II. And so we got involved in politics. I don't know what part of the 60s, but I'm also from that era. So we were involved in a lot of politics back then. And then I went to Yale University, partly because of political science, and studied a couple of the great professors there about democratic theory and government and that sort of thing. So it was real interesting. When I came home, I built houses in Hood River for a while and had a firewood business, solar energy business. And then the recession of the 80s was on, so I went to law school. And I came here when I was 34 out of law school and worked for another lawyer who's for a short time and then started my own practice. And so I was the first chair of the sole and small firm practice section of the bar and did that for a bunch of years. And one of my clients, after I'd been there a while, was a building company. And I'd had a lot of experience in building, knew about it, so I went to work for them at Sunforest Construction and worked there for 8 years, became president of that company. And that was during the boom and the bust. And we got the company through the hardest times here, other than the 80s, which was tough. And then after that, I went into building on my own for 5 years. I like that. In our building, we did a lot of building throughout the county, particularly in a lot of the resorts and custom lots and things. So I got to know a lot of the county that way. And as a lawyer, when you're kind of working the county courts, since I had a general practice, so I, worked with a lot of different people throughout the county that as a lawyer. So, but I've lived in Bend the whole time, and different parts of the Bend. I live in Southeast Bend now. And in 2016, I ran for county commissioner. That was kind of something I always wanted to do. I always thought public service is good, and I had the background, and I brought a certain perspective of business and that sort of thing to it. So I and won that race. But one of the things I did is when I ran, did a lot of door-to-door work. So I walked all of Terrebonne, walked all of Sisters, and walked all of Lapine, and then part of, and so I think my perspective on this committee is to make sure that the people out there's a lot of people in the county that don't have any representation of government except the county. And there's lots of things the county commissioners do that's very specific to road districts and places like Black Butte or Sun River that are really different than the city's interests. So I hope that perspective comes out. Honored to be on the committee and look forward to working on it.
Thank you. Well, thanks to all of you. We're an interesting group. And we have the time and the talent to, I think, come up with a result that will benefit the county. Our meeting schedule is going to be on Wednesdays 1 to 3, beginning September 10th. And the first meeting will be here in Bend in the same location, but after that, we're going to go to Sisters on the 17th, Redmond on the 24th, and Lapine on October 1st. And we have a schedule that goes further than that into October, but my hope is that things will move fairly reasonably with the committee. And as we get into the mapping and the information that's available, that we can come to some conclusions without needing to meet most of the time in October, but we shall see. From a planning perspective, we are supposed to have our work done by November so that the commissioners can have it, review it, and vote on it in December. And then if they say, okay, this is what we're going to move forward on this, then they will put it on the May ballot. And they need to have their paperwork done, ballot title and all that stuff done in February. So that's the time frame of what we hope to accomplish and come up with 5 districts that represent Deschutes County in a fair and balanced way.
What happens if they don't accept our recommendation? Or
Well,
should I not ask that yet?
No, that's fine. They'd have 2 choices. One, they could say, we're not going to put anything on the ballot. Or they could say, okay, we're going to take the work you did and we're going to draw up our own mapping. But I think they want to avoid that because that's why we're here. And it gives, I think, more credibility to the voting public when it's an outside commission that comes forward and says, we've studied this, we've done this, we recommend it. And so, again, my optimism, once we complete our work, I hope the county commission on a 3-0 vote says, let's send it to the ballot and then move forward.
My hope too.
Yep, good. Meeting rules and conduct, Robert's Rule of Order, revised, and I'm the parliamentarian too. So I don't need it today. This is just an orientation, but I'll bring the book and hopefully you'll never require me to look at it, but I'll have it just in case. And you notice in the charter that we've gotten from the county, we're nonpartisan. So the commissioners are nonpartisan. Our work is nonpartisan. A lot of discussion and print on gerrymandering right now. We're not into gerrymandering. And it's really difficult to do in Deschutes County and in Oregon because the major party are the non-affiliated and independent smaller parties. So then it's the Democratic Party and then the Republicans. So You know, how do you gerrymander for a group of non-affiliateds who don't have a formal organization? Of course, the independent party is different from that. But anyway, that's not our purpose or intent. And so we're going to have some great staff work that's going to provide a lot of information to us and data. And so one of the questions is, how do you handle that? Not so much from what they'll produce, as in our next meeting, we'll actually show and give some examples of the map. We'll have it on the screen, and you have 50 precincts here and how they can line up and where they are. There's 4 cities in Deschutes County. But then there obviously are going to be requests and questions and whatnot. And so the basic ground rule is if you have questions, then let's say you want something, additional information in the next meeting, that's fine. But if you could filter that through me so that the staff isn't getting requests to do different things, and because they do have some limited time, they have other jobs and responsibilities. But if you have requests, you want to see something added to the agenda when it comes out, contact me. If we're in a meeting and someone wants information and a majority of the community says, you know, that doesn't really help what we're trying to do, then unless you have a quorum is 4, and unless 4 say, let's go ahead and get that information, then you would move forward. And we might have those friendly discussions too, that, you know, motor vehicle registrations, is that important to what we're doing? School enrollment, those sorts of things.
No, thank you.
Might be a question that someone has, but is it really what the group needs to make the decisions is where we're heading? Those types of things. And then you each have an email, a Deschutes County email. I had my son-in-law help me set that up and explain it to me. So do you have any questions about that or how to use that? Don't ask me, because I can't help you with it.
I've asked, and I don't have a mobile device unless you call a carrier pigeon.
Okay.
Nick said he's working on it for me.
Oh, okay.
We'll follow up with you off
Yeah, no,
out of the meeting to try to get that up and running for you, Bertie. Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll find something that'll work. But you do have a phone.
yeah,
Okay, good, good.
I have a flip phone
Oh, wow.
and I can use the slide rule.
Well, I used to have a slide rule. I don't know where it is anymore. You probably still have a slide rule. Yeah.
Batteries don't go dead on them.
Okay, so any questions on those general ground rules? And if one of you requests something that we provide, we'll provide it to all 7 individuals. That's part of the rule too. And so you can't call myself or Steve and say, I have a question, can you keep this confidential? Because the answer is probably no. That would not be what we're trying to do here. So, but we can certainly answer questions and those sorts of things.
If we need to get a hold of you, can we call you?
Oh, yes.
Do you have a number?
Oh, yes. And you should have the number. I'll give it to you right now.
Hang on, go ahead.
541
541
408
408
4303.
4303.
That's it.
Thank you.
You bet. And I have each of your numbers. All right, now the part that we've all been waiting for, the Dave Doyle presentation on ethics.
Yeah, I don't know so much ethics. You folks all in your material provided 2 handouts from the state of Oregon dealing with the public meetings. I will touch quickly on public records, and that segues out of the county email. The reason we're asking that you utilize the county email for any email communications associated with your work on this committee is there's a good strong probability there'll be some public records requests made. And it's a lot easier, one, for us to mine into your county email and get responsive emails because we can't get into your Gmail accounts. And secondly, for you, it's a lot less invasive to have your Gmail account potentially opened up so that we can provide responses to legitimate public records requests. So I can't make you do it obviously, but I would strongly encourage you to the extent you can, any communications you have in any way associated with this committee that you're on and this task that you folks have taken on, run it through your county email as best you can. Just gonna make it easier when the public records requests come. And I anticipate that they will. You're doing a very, high level task. You're gonna be providing a recommendation to the commissioners on something that's extremely political and very much charged. If we don't get some public records requests, I'll be really surprised. So word to the wise, I'd use your county email. As far as public meetings go, literature we provided from the state walks you through it really, really well. You're considered a governing body because you're an advisory body that's formed by a public body, in this case, the commissioners, to make a recommendation on a policy or administration matter. So the public meeting laws apply to you. That means these meetings are going to be properly noticed. There's going to be minutes maintained. They're going to be live streamed. People will have an opportunity to communicate in electronically if they're not here in the room to ask questions and whatnot. And this is all recorded for posterity. So, be cognizant of that. Just going through the handout here, and I don't want to, read it. One of the things you need to be aware of is the whole quorum, and Neil talked about a quorum, right? So a group of you less than a quorum can meet, and you can actually talk about committee business. I wouldn't advise it, frankly, but you certainly can, and that's your prerogative. If a quorum meets, meaning 4 of you or more, then it needs to be in the context of this, unless you're meeting about a baseball game or go to the park and have a hot dog or something. If you're talking about anything that touches on this committee's work, and there's 4 or more of you, it needs to be in this room or whatever room you're at on the road show, but having been properly noticed with the public right to attend and participate at it. So please keep that in mind.
And that includes a phone conference call.
Yeah, absolutely. Electronic communications work as well. One of the things the state's real big on, and it grew out of a case in Lane County years ago, that we used to call it a daisy chain. Now it's called a serial communication. You need to be careful that you don't, member 1 calls member 2 and talks about something and gets into the weeds about it. That's fine. That's not a quorum. But then member 2 calls member 3, has the same discussion and lets on what member 1 was thinking about on it. And if that continues on in that daisy chain fashion, at some point you have essentially a public meeting. You've just done it through this daisy chain process. We don't want that occurring. So again, be cognizant of that. We all get in trouble when that happens, and it's a bad optic, and we don't want that. There are times you can talk a quorum of you, like I say, on the phone through a serial communication or whatnot, if it doesn't involve the substance of what it is you folks are doing, information, recommendations, thoughts that are relevant to that. So again, if you're calling to talk about the National League playoff series or something in October, knock yourselves out. You could have a group call with all 7 of you. But don't be talking about this business, because if you do, it's going to leak in some capacity. Someone's going to find out about it, and then we're going to be hearing that there were these illegal public meetings being held. And your deliberations, your discussions need to be public. That's the whole idea of the public meeting laws, is so that this is all done. There's also literature in here about the use of an intermediary, right? So you can't use Neil to go and poll each of you and share with you what the other commissioner or what the other board member is thinking on any particular matter. That would be, again, violating the public meeting rules. So we don't want to do that either. And it's a little different, because there are 7 of you. So again, 3 of you can meet and you can have really knockdown, drag out discussions about what's going on in this committee and what you think. But when you get to 4, that's where the problem's created. And you can get to 4 inadvertently. 2 or 3 of you might meet, and then that might get shared with a 3rd that wasn't there, and it gets shared with a 4th who was also not there. And arguably, you've got a kind of a hybrid serial communication that, again, would trigger the public meeting rules. So I think the simplest is just keep your business as much as you can in here in the room, and or limit it to 3 or less of you, and make sure that you're not communicating back. For instance, what we do at the county sometimes, if we have to reach out to the county commissioners and send them some information, they may respond back to say Nick, but Nick will always make it clear to them, don't respond to the other commissioners. Don't do the reply all, just reply to Nick. So Nick might be polling them on some question and wanting to know something, they'll just reply to him. If they hit reply all, now the other two commissioners know what the one commissioner is thinking on some matter of county business. Arguably, you got an illegal public meeting at that point. So same theory and same concept applies with you folks. That's really, I don't want to be redundant. This is a really good handout that we gave you. I'm not a big fan of handouts, and oftentimes they're much more verbose than they need to be, but this one from the state is a really good one. It's got the little flow chart type of pictures, and it's easy to track and easy to follow. It's not all that terribly confusing. County legal is available to this committee. We typically coordinate through Jen, but we're available if you folks need us. We're not going to be attending these on any kind of regular basis, but to the extent that you feel there may be a need, we'll probably defer to Neil on that. But by all means, let Jen know and she'll let us know. And in most cases, we could probably get, if something happens mid-meeting, we could probably get back to you within 10 minutes. Jen can track me down by cell phone or something, and once I'm in a dead zone or on an airplane, I'll be able to get back to her right away. So.
And the commission that views this is the Oregon Ethics Commission, and they are in Salem, and they have a phone number you can use if you have a question about something. And you can call me, and I'll give you that phone number too, and they try to respond promptly. But right now they're struggling with the word intermediary, because that's where some city commissions have gotten into a problem. And when I talked to some of you, I gave you some examples of what I would be concerned about. Let's say a member of the press calls, and this would be their job, and say, how are you going to vote on this? And you tell them, and then that, and he says or she says that I'm going to go ahead and call the other commissioners, see what they're up to on this. And if you then said, okay, and then let me know what they're going to do, that gets you into trouble, because this person supposedly then would have a quorum, would talk to most of you, and then tell the information to this other person. So my advice there would be, don't ask for that information wait till you read it in the paper or whatnot, and take the additional precautions, and don't tell me what the others say, or you don't have to tell them how you intend to vote or what your concern is on a particular mapping district. That's another one. And you'll probably also get some questions from maybe the Democratic Central Committee person, or Republican or Independent Central Committee. I don't know if you have one, Andrew, but saying what's happening, give me an update on this, etc. And then that person might say, well, I'm going to call some others here and see what they're doing on this. Again, then that's an intermediary. And if they can talk to 4 people and somehow this gets back to you, you go into that gray area. The Ethics Commission has asked the legislature, and before it adjourned, to give them some more clarity on this. They didn't do that. They're in the process of revising their definition of it, but we don't have that yet. So when that happens, and it probably won't happen for a couple of weeks until we actually are looking at maps and talking about things, you just got to be cautious, because at that point, if you get turned into the Ethics Commission, they do an initial investigation, then they decide whether or not to move forward or not. Normally you have to hire an attorney. So, and you're highly paid in this position. So that wouldn't be a good option for you. And so that's, and your friends, are going to say, hey, how's this going and whatnot. And it's fine to talk to them in general terms, but just be careful. If you start talking about specifically what you're going to do, because they may then talk to somebody else, and pretty soon you got a quorum before. Yeah. Did I say that correctly, sir?
You definitely pointed out it's a gray area, and there's a lot of, it's in flux right now. So word to the wise would just be to avoid those third parties that are going to be the spoke on the wheel that are reaching out to all these other folks.
Any questions for Dave or myself? Good. All right. Item number 4, communications. Jen.
Hello again. So just going to go over some quick communication channels. So the first one that's been talked about is the county email addresses. So going forward, We will be communicating with the committee as needed or as requested via county email addresses. I talked to a couple of you having a little bit of struggle, so we, and not on your fault. It's a complicated system to get it initially set up. So we'll work with you individually. If information goes out in the interim when emails aren't working for the few of you I talked to, I will communicate that directly with you. But going forward, all communication pertaining to the DMAC will be through your county email addresses. Things that you will see on a weekly basis are the meeting packets and the meeting, which will include the draft meeting minutes. We do ask that you open those up and look at them before you come to the meeting. And typically speaking, those will come out the Monday before the Wednesday meeting. Somewhere in there is the goal and the aim there. All the meetings will be publicly noticed, including those meeting packets. So those will be out in the public. So we do encourage you to look at those internally via the county email addresses. Additionally, Neil talked a little bit earlier about reaching out for any kind of individual staff requests you have. We've set up an email to make that very easy to use for any sort of staff requests or clarifications. And that email is just dmac@deschutes.org. Neil gets that, Nick gets that, Steve gets that, I get that, I think Lee gets that. So anyone who's, the staff support for you for this committee, including your chair and facilitator, will get that. And that's a really easy just way to communicate your requests or any kind of questions you have or any information you want to provide, like if you have to miss a meeting. If you send it there, then the basis is covered on who gets to see that and where it goes. Additionally, we've set up a website. It's deschutes.org/DMAC. We will post all agendas on there, all meeting packets, finalized, approved meeting minutes, as well as video recordings. I think it's been mentioned that we are recording this video. All videos or all meetings will be live broadcast and recorded. And those will be up there on the link. So if there is something, let's say you want to go back and watch a discussion from the previous week or from 2 weeks ago, you'll be able to access that via that website. The link will be there. The meeting recording will be delayed by about 24 hours. So it usually goes up within 24 hours of the meeting taking place. The meeting packet, again, will try to get published at Monday at the latest before the Wednesday meeting. I think that's it for the email or for the website. We're in any kind of documentation. If there's requests for like precinct maps, anything kind of public, we'll also put that on there just for full transparency's sake. Right now on that meeting, on that website, you'll see something like the committee meeting guidelines, which Neil will review later on. We have the meeting packet up there already. So it'll be a resource for the public, but also for the committee members as well to access anything on there. And then to go to the meeting minutes. So I think a lot of you are familiar kind of with the procedural process, but I'm just going to touch on the procedural process really quickly for those who may not be familiar with the committee process. So all meetings will be called to order by the chair and the facilitator. And then typically the next order of business is to approve the draft minutes from the previous meetings. If you have something in the meeting minutes that you've read beforehand that you'd like changed, you are free to reach out to that DMAC@deschutes.org to suggest a change, and then we can make that change before those draft meeting minutes go before you to get approved. But typically they're minor changes. Typically we review them internally before we put them before you for the draft approval. So usually the second item on those agendas will be approving the draft meeting minutes. How that works is somebody makes a motion to approve the minutes, somebody will second it, and then the committee will vote aye or nay to approve the draft meeting minutes. So it's a very procedural thing, but typically done on those committee meetings. And then one of the final things that happen in those committee minutes is the meeting is adjourned typically by also the chair there. So just a few procedural things for those who are not kind of familiar with the committee process. And then all the work happens in between those two items. And then I think after that, now I'll turn it over to Kim Catcher, our PIO, to talk about media policy and contacts.
So the Deschutes County media policy allows county employees and volunteer committee members to speak to the meeting. However, if you're not comfortable doing so, you're not required to do so. If you're contacted by a member of the media and let me see my notes here, so I'll make sure I'm remembering everything. If you're contacted by a member of the media, but you prefer not to speak with them or you're not available, please have them reach out to me directly and I'll connect them with somebody. If you're contacted by a member of the media and you do speak to them, please make sure that you let them know upfront that you're sharing your own personal view and you're not speaking on behalf of the committee or Deschutes County. Then finally, when you do talk to the media, I would appreciate it if you send me an email afterwards, letting me know what media outlet you spoke to, who the reporter was, and maybe a couple bullet points about what was discussed. That's helpful for me. I track our media coverage and then I share that with county administration. I can give you are you providing emails and phone numbers for staff contact? Or does
We
somebody-
can, I can send out in a kind of a, when I send out the meeting minutes from the draft meeting minutes from this one, I can include your contact information, so everyone has Kim's contact information if you want to refer them to you. So I'll make a note of that.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on any of the communication, media, email,
And Kim's part of the DMAC group.
working group? Yes.
So if we sent something to DMAC at Deschutes.org, you're gonna see that too. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Oh, yes.
Is there an email for members of the public to email the committee instead of our individual emails?
It's again, that DMAC at Deschutes.org, that is what we're referring the members of the committee or the members of the public to send emails to. I think this is maybe a later discussion, or you guys can discuss this now too. That is also where any sort of public comments go, so the committee can decide if they want to see all of those public comments that go generally to the inbox, or if you, want staff to report out what's coming in and kind of the general tone of those two. So there's a couple options there that haven't been decided, up to the committee to decide on how they want to intake some of that.
Just so I'm clear, the way it's set up right now, if someone says the DMAC, it just goes to staff. So
Yep.
we wouldn't see that.
Yeah, at Neil too, yep.
And anything of substance, we're happy to share. In fact, if you want to be on the list to receive it, but there's
Well,
probably some screening
I
that
was
needs
just
to be
wondering
done.
if there needed to be an email that was specifically the committee members for public, if they want to reach out to the whole committee, which is usually what we usually have at our committees. It's just a committee email. It can go to staff and members, or if it's more like you're going to gather it and sort of give us here's everything we've received from the public. Either, I don't know the best way to do that, so.
Could do it either way. So it's, why don't we think about that? And yes, Phil.
I kind of like that idea too, because I think people just want to say what they want to say, and they're gonna do it however they can, and a lot of people don't want to come to meetings or whatever, so they're just talking about the issues. It'd be good that seems like a lot of our job is gathering input, so I wouldn't mind seeing those I guess I'd like to see those.
And they're already telling us what we're thinking in the newspapers, so.
Started with that.
Yeah.
And there'll be 15 minutes of public testimony at the beginning of each meeting. And of course, at that time, they're also welcome to send written information in too. But so Jen, is it difficult to send out all the emails that come in from the general public, or?
Yeah, so I think if the committee is interested in seeing all the public comment that comes in, we could do several ways, but I think the easy way versus setting up a separate email address, since we have the DMAC at Deschutes.org, very easy. I can just forward those to every committee member each time they come in. If you're interested in that, I already have, prior to the committee starting, we have about 15 or 20, but that was really kind of on like the formation of how the committee was getting there, but happy to share those as well. We could also share them on the screen during the public comment section. I don't know if there's other options on the table, but I think if you want to see them via email, it's probably easier to filter them for the DMAC. And then I'm happy I can easily forward that to you guys and as they come in, or package them up and forward them.
I think a packet would be better, like maybe once a week or
That's what I was.
every couple of days. And
Yeah,
every time they come, that's just a lot.
So I can do that. I can just attach all the emails of the public comment for the week, and maybe when I send out the draft email,
Yeah.
the draft minutes, I include the public comments that come in from that time period. Does that work for everyone?
Okay, good. All right, review the guidelines. That's the last 3 pages on the information about the DMAC Advisory Committee guidelines. The ground rules, attendance is real important because we're gonna put up on the screen mapping. And with Lee and Phil there, okay, let's move this precinct over here and what impact that has, et cetera. If you're trying to follow that from home, it isn't gonna work very well. It's just gonna be more difficult. So I just want to emphasize that the attendance will really help you as an individual, and also you'll understand then what's going on. We didn't include a map of Deschutes County public information or the precincts. We have 50 or the current voter registration, et cetera, because it's all there as public record. That'll happen at the next meeting. You'll be able to see that. So that's and then it'll give us a chance in the interim too to do a couple walkthroughs just to make sure that our software and the IT works so that it's clearly understandable to you when you see this. A quorum we've already talked about. We need 4. But the public comments we've also covered too. In the meeting itself, if into something and 3 of you have something to say, it would be helpful to me if you just raise your hand, because we don't want 3 or 4 people talking at once. And I'll recognize everybody in the pattern, and that's I think the best way to handle it. Otherwise, it's who shouts the loudest, and that isn't productive. About the information that will be available, we have the 2020 census. The census date is April 1 of each year. The census is very detailed. It counts everybody. Even those that can't vote. If you're 17 and younger, you're included in the census. If you're not an American citizen entitled to vote, you're included in the census. There's an attempt to go out to the homeless camps and count. So the purpose is to find out in each state who's there. And this has been true for a long time. They used to tack on other questions like in FDR's first census, he asked, how many of you have a radio? And I think he was thinking of his fireside chats, maybe, that you wanted to know what the audience. Remember, I can remember my parents saying, hey, they ask if we have a television. You know, that was probably in the 50s. Other questions were, do you have hot and cold running water? Do you have toilets? This last census, I don't think we had any of those. There was a big hubbub about asking whether or not they're an American citizen, but that question was not asked. So it counts everybody as of April 1 of 2020. And then the second part of that under federal law is then they decide how to determine, it's a determination of the state to do the congressional districts. We have 435 representatives. That's a set number. So after each sentence, some states lose. California lost, New York lost, other states gained. Oregon got a new one. And so that's the second thing, but that's strictly up to the states on how to do that. Then after that, the census is 5 years old. So it's, but we know that things have changed. There's been some growth. And Portland State has a resource center that provides information, which is helpful, but it doesn't say where those people are or where they've, I mean, it gives a bend increase in population, but we don't know what precincts they're in, for example. The same is true of every other place, the unincorporated areas, the other cities. They do it for each of the 4 cities. Deschutes County has 4 cities. Again, it's helpful, but it's not granular enough to really get down to saying, okay, how many of them people are in this precinct? So you might want to look at other information. The most accurate information we have is on the registered voters. That's almost daily. And Steve can, I say almost daily, but
It is daily.
it is daily. Tell you how many registered voters there are in every single precinct. And so we know that's good, accurate information. And my hope, and I think it'll probably happen, that the population information we have and the registered voters are going to be closely aligned in most instances. And so they're not mutually exclusive or one's right or the other's wrong. But from an accuracy standpoint, registered voters is the most accurate. But I threw on, you might want other information. Portland State takes a look at registration of cars or driver's license and those sorts of things, or death certificates, birth certificates, those sorts of things. Steve does that too, because you have to cull the voters roll, the people who have passed away. But again, it's doesn't necessarily tie to the precincts. And the other thing we put in there is in 2022, the county did a very thorough job in cleaning up and reorganizing their precincts. And so we have 50, and our goal is, as we go through this, not to divide a precinct, because that's difficult to do, but it can be done, but there's also an expense involved. And Steve, do you have anything to add on that?
I mean, just not being familiar, it sounds like there's a wealth of knowledge here, but is everybody familiar with what a precinct is? And basically, it's a geographical area that has our limitations is that it's not to exceed 10,000 voters. And that's because we're vote by mail. Back in the day when we had polling place elections, they were not to exceed 1,000 voters. But now it's a little bit more arbitrary, but each precinct represents a certain amount or certain districts that picture an overlay of a school district and a water district and a park and rec district. We're going to draw those precinct boundaries to contain those certain district attributes. And we happen to have 50. So some of those precincts are split and may have 2 school districts within them. I won't get into the weeds of that right now, but the maps that you'll be seeing have distinct precinct lines. And if we were to split a precinct line because you say that one of these new districts should bisect that, it just would work better for whatever the purpose is that you're working toward. That would create 2 different ballot styles. That would mean that the people that lived in that precinct, a certain part of the precinct those voters would see one district, one commissioner race on their ballot, and then somebody across the street may not see that same person or would not see that same person. They may not have a commissioner race on there at all. So maintaining those precinct lines will allow us to not create additional ballot styles that would incur additional cost and maybe some confusion within a precinct. I live in precinct 5. Well, I do too. Well, I voted for so-and-so. Well, I didn't see so-and-so on the ballot. It maintains a little bit more, it will save us time and complexity in conducting elections. And that's not the case throughout the county. We have a lot of precinct splits. The COCC, when they redrafted their zones, they split through a lot of our precincts. So we have just that. We have a lot of conversations and explaining to do each election as to why one neighbor sees one commissioner or COCC seat and another neighbor sees something different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, when were the precincts last adjusted then?
So we'll do that every 10 years. I mean, we're constantly reevaluating. You may have an annexation of a district, a fire district that is now a part of, a property that's annexing into a fire district or something like that. We may need to modify a precinct line boundary, but by and large, the largest amount of movement in those precinct lines is done every 10 years after the census.
So it was 2021 was the last time?
Yeah, as Neil mentioned, so 2020 was the census. By the time those newly drawn congressional state senate and state rep district boundary lines were presented to the county was late in 21. We rolled those out and made those modifications in early 22. So, Brandon?
You usually don't get the information from the census for about a year or so. Now with AI, maybe it'll be quicker, but that's usually what happens. Bernie?
My numbers might be off because things change so quick, but with five commissioners, you have 5 districts, which each commissioner would be, say, approximately responsible about 42,000 people. That's, can bounce, but I mean, will you try to hold into that equal groups here and there?
So that's part of the guidelines too. I think Neil will speak to it, but I think there's that variance that your goal will be to try and keep that within a 5% variance from one district to another. And of course, that's gonna change, and we'll have another crack at this again 5 years from now after the next census, when we reevaluate all those, the newly drawn congressional, state senate and state rep district lines.
And the fudge factor of 5%, we can actually do 10% according to the Secretary of State guidelines. Again, we think we're better than that, so we threw in, we're gonna
That was
try.
my question, was
We're
it,
gonna try and be 5%, but it might be 4.9, it could be 5.8. Our goal was 5%.
well, I was saying, is it plus or minus 5, which would be a span of 10?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
I guess that brings up a question for me that I've written down is sort of what is the problem we're trying to solve? And have we been directed only to divide into 5, or are we allowed to consider whether there should be an at-large district? Many counties that have districts also have an at-large district, and they also directly elect a chair, which we don't have on the books here, and we don't do that here. So I guess that's a question of sort of what is this committee allowed to talk about? If it's just dividing into 5 with no commissioner being accountable to the whole county, I think we should be clear about that. Or if we're allowed to talk about different ways to have 5 districts that might not just be, 5 separate districts.
From the county commission right now, it's 5 districts.
So I just want to be clear, that means 5 separate districts with no at-large districts at all.
Correct.
And is there any way for us to give any feedback on that or
If-
clarify that intention with
Yeah,
the
because 5
commission?
districts could, that doesn't mean you can't have, the 5th can't be at large. That's still 5 districts. You just have 4 that are representing pieces of the pie, but the 5th one's the whole pie.
Well, the way it came from the county commissioners, I understand it, is it was supposed to be 5 separate districts.
Okay, but
Not at
distinct,
large.
I'd like to understand the language around that,
Mhm.
makes that very specific. Because as the mayor says, there's a lot of precedent for this other places. And it seems kind of silly for us to throw that out right at the outset. If other places made it work. I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel. It's one of the reasons why I was quite supportive of the idea of us going to a nonpartisan structure in the county, because that's what's worked for most Oregon counties for many, many years. So anyway, is there a way we can get
Like
some
clarification.
further clarification? on that?
That's clarification, but it would require that, I think, the county commission to come back and say, okay, you have to do, you can open that up. So
That's pretty important how I approach this, I think. So I don't know what other
Think so too.
members
I mean,
think, just to get clarity on that.
So I was at the meeting where they passed it and it was specifically taken out as an alternative, as the one would be at large. I mean, I note of it, no for BOCC 723. So you wouldn't be going back to that. That's one. The other is, and this gets to, you might be asking what other things we're thinking about or whatever. Some of the counties in Oregon that have an at large, they're home rule counties. And so they have their own, they have a whole different system than what we have. So that's something that's, I mentioned to you when I call or when we talk, I'd really like to know about some of the history of the other districts, because I know Hood River is home rule. I think maybe Multnomah and Washington both have at large, and I think they are too. I'm not positive, but so there's a difference of why they're there, and what we're doing is different because we're not home rule. So that's my perspective.
I'd like here in 2006 or 2007, and it was defeated. Jen?
We can speak to this a little bit, and I'm gonna let Nick and Steve interrupt me if I say this wrong. So the guidelines, the wording for the guidelines is clear. We chose guidelines over a charter. So it is guidelines provided to you based off of feedback that staff has gone before the board with. We have gone before the board multiple times over the last 6 months to kind of draft these guidelines, but they are guidelines. The committee can present what they want, what they are recommending to the board. This is not this is not like there's no room for committee interpretation in these guidelines, but the word guidelines was chosen very specifically. A majority of the commissioners have shown a preference for 5 districts. And so we took that language out with the 4 districts and 1 at large. But again, the committee is able to present a map that, you know, a majority of the committee votes on for the commissioners to consider. So wanted to clarify that bit, if that helps at all.
That's very helpful.
And also the mission and purpose of those guidelines that were reviewed by the board and discussed by the board is that the DMAC is to draft a 5-commissioner district map consisting of proportional districts. So that answers the question that Andrew brought up to me. That's my thought on that, but you are the committee, so I just want to bring up the proportion and that this was reviewed by the board, and I thought, and I heard the same thing was brought up earlier.
Well, they could still be proportional. They would just be bigger. And it would be proportioned amongst 4 instead of 5, and then you have a 5th that's covering the whole county. That's still proportional, I think.
And Nick, do you want to add anything? I think we kind of gave 2 different interpretations a little bit on that too, so like.
We can seek clarity from the board next Wednesday if that's helpful, but I think the board is crystal clear. A majority of the board said 5 districts and their intent was not 4 plus 1 at large. I mean, that's what we heard. We asked them multiple times, but if the committee wishes, we're happy to seek clarification next Wednesday, September 3rd, prior to the committee meeting again on September 10th.
I guess I would ask for that because that really constrains our ability to think about, again, what is, and maybe this can come from the commission too, but I'd love to hear other people's, what are we trying to solve here? Like, how are we getting better governance and better representation through this process? Like, what's the end goal? For me, that's what I want to think about. And then back up and say, okay, what are the ways we can get there? And it seems like we've just been told a narrow path without being able to consider some other option. And I agree with Drew that, like, looking at what other counties do, that's one of the questions I was going to have is like, can we get a kind of a survey of the rest of the counties of Oregon, you know, who has districts or who doesn't, maybe why or why not, to help us think about how to form these.
Well, that would probably be pretty easy to do. I think there's 36 counties and I probably 10 are home rule. I'm not sure anymore what they are. But then we have counties like Deschutes County, which are run by the statutes of the state of Oregon because they're not home rule. So that information wouldn't be difficult to get. But I think you also want to ask the county commission again for clarity on this, just so if they want, and my understanding was they wanted 5 separate districts, none at large. And we can certainly ask that at their next meeting.
So going back to my experience, even though it's Indiana, we had north, center, south, and then 1 at large. So but I'm curious about the home rule and what other counties do and how they do it also. So I'd like a little bit more history background on that.
Okay, well, we'll ask for clarification.
So I question. So it came up, what problem we're trying to solve. One of the reasons it was sold to go from 3 to 5 was as the county gets more population, it gets harder for commissioners to represent all of it. It's a lot of effort. I mean, you've got, because if you're a good commissioner, you go to all these places, there's events, there's everything. And so as you get more, and I think that's one of the reasons the 3 largest counties in the state do have 5 commissioners is because you get around. And so essentially the people become representatives like they are in Congress or the legislature. I think that was one of the reasons that people sold the idea was 5 would make it less burdensome to run them throughout. And in the last 30 years, there's been such a growth in the county that it has gotten harder to be a county, but a lot of most of the smaller counties, actually, I think the only small counties that have 5 were home rule counties, and that's Clatsop and Hood River, I think. But most smaller counties don't, they can get around everywhere, but it's for over 200,000, it's hard, I guess. That was one of the reasons I think they did that. But
Yes.
Would the elected commissioner have to live within the district, or is that established already?
Generally, that's the case. You'd have to live within the district that you're
Not
running.
true for Congress. Not true for Congress.
Yeah, no, but they're not a good example right now. But yes, and so one of the reasons too why the goal is to put this on the ballot in May, because there were over 6 people have already filed for commission seats. In fact, someone said it might be 9 now. But as we conclude our work and come up with the districts, they might withdraw from where they're running now on for a certain seat and say, now I want to run for this one, because that's the district where they're going to be living.
Is that in the county charter or whatever guidelines for that? That you have to live within the district?
Nick, would you know?
So I did ask legal counsel on this. We are right now running with the assumption that the elected commissioner would live in the district that they are running for. So it's, wish Dave was here, but I asked Dave that specific question. So I think the legal counsel's response was the assumption is that the commissioner would live in the district that they're running for.
Yeah.
Raises a couple of questions in my mind. One, if you're in a district and you live in the district and you are elected for that district, you still are responsible for everything else in the county.
Correct.
So getting around, I wasn't sure how that relates. The other thing is, what if somebody from, what if a district nobody runs?
When would that happen?
I think it
Just a question.
probably under Oregon law, and again, this would be something to check, then the commission would appoint to fill the vacancy.
If nobody ran, there would likely be a winner via write-in. There would be a winner via write-in. Maybe a cruel joke by somebody, but unless somebody was running a concerted write-in campaign, but somebody would be voted in. Whether they accepted the position or not is a different question, but it would likely be one via write-in.
Yes.
I just wanted, you just said something that actually is one of my concerns, and I don't know if now this is the time to bring it up, but I just want folks to know that I am actually really concerned about the scenario you just stated, where folks are going to be running for our 5 new seats that the voters approved by a large margin. And at the same time, we're going to be asking voters to approve districts without knowing if those districts match the folks who are running. I think that's a problem, actually, not a benefit. So I'm thinking about that as well as we go through this. And just wanted to mention it since you mentioned it. And then I have a few things of data that would be helpful. I don't know when we want to transition to that, but I'm happy to.
Let's answer the first question, then we'll go to data.
Yeah.
So the people we have 4 seats that are going to be open in May. And so they're going to serve we have the 2 new commissioners coming in. They're going to serve a 2-year term. And then the next election cycle, all 5 will be up.
No, the 3.
3, excuse me, all 3 would be up. I get my number right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be I think answer your first question as to, I mean, they make a political decision where do I want to run? And do I want to run in the area where I'm living now, or do I want to move?
Right, I think there's a risk here of the public understanding that we have sitting commissioners who may run again, drawing maps, knowing who all these folks are who filed. And they may be drawing some people out so they can't run again, or they may be drawing a map. I don't want that perception, right, to be happening. So I just want to be careful when we're talking about that. I think that's a consequence of what we're doing here. I wouldn't see it as a benefit at all. So I just want to be careful with that.
I'm sorry, I know it's not me, but I just want to add a note. It's not the commissioners doing it. This is you, as an individual.
We've been told they can take our recommendation. I mean,
Yeah,
that's all.
but it's not you, but it's you as the committee coming up with a consensus to say that this would be the best. It's not necessarily the commissioners. Yes, they would need to approve it and move forward, but I can't imagine what would the influence be right now on you. You are the committee, you are the body making that decision.
Yeah, I think we'll do our best, for sure.
Should we talk about data, what information you'd like? That I haven't already.
More question.
Yes.
I'm still a little fuzzy on precincts. And other than cost and complication effort, that's the reason we wouldn't break up a precinct?
Yes.
That's
Those would be the top reasons. Yeah, again, we're going to be reevaluating precinct lines come the next census anyway, so that's coming up pretty soon. But we may the legislature may split them on us, or yes, exactly. That's just, it's just a request. It's a guideline. It's not hard and fast. There's no hard stop on it. It's just a request. Yes, yeah.
And the committee can also make other recommendations too. For example, when the 2030 census is completed, that in 2031, 32, the commission should take a look again at the different districts. Because you'll have accurate population information in addition to the accurate voting record. They may not, but
So within each community, you have specific data on everybody that's in that boundary.
Right now, we have current number of registered voters on, everybody within that boundary.
I'm not sure the purpose of precincts, but maybe I don't need to know.
Just like little building blocks.
Yeah, I get that, exactly.
Yeah.
Why?
yeah, the census information is very granular. They do the building blocks.
Precincts would be more of, again, maybe the concept would lead back to polling places and other things that you lived within a precinct and your polling place was within that precinct, and that precinct, again, was not to be more than 1,000 voters, because you wouldn't want the lines, of course, to be, you want everybody to be able to go to the polls and cast a ballot if they wanted to, so keeping it within that boundary. Since we moved to vote by mail, you're right, Ned, it's a little bit more arbitrary. You could say our county has one precinct, and then we're just divided up by splits. So you would still have some sort of numerical value associated, because we need to be able to identify that you live where you live, and that the content on your ballot is what you're qualified to vote on. So you live in your precinct you live in, and by that number, I know what you're eligible to vote on. So we give you that a correct ballot. That makes any more sense. Doesn't muddy the water.
Number 23.
So you are, no, Nancy might be able to rattle that off.
She's got it memorized.
All right, let's talk about what information the committee would like. And in order to move through this process. You mentioned you had a couple.
Yeah, so two parts of the guidelines. One mentioned growth patterns, and it mentioned building permits and UGB expansions, but I would like to know the trends on voter registration. Like we could gather that by precinct, which precincts are more, which precincts are losing voters. So I think that would be helpful to understand for growth. It said current voter registration as requested by DMAC. I would like to request that. I think otherwise we're looking at Feb 22 per the guidelines. So I know we can't, I'm not going to update probably every day how many, but maybe we pick August as our date and say we're going to use some current voter registration from that date forward. A couple of really nuanced things. Do we count folks who are in our jail? And how do we count them? I just had a question about that. And then.
Is that a big number?
I know, but it was just like, I'm just curious, for folks in different counties that have, state prisons, it's a different thing, right? And then I had written down just city populations. I don't know I know we don't have updated census data because we're mid-cycle here, but does PSU, they can't do precincts, but can they do cities?
Yes.
So maybe some just.
And they do cities.
Yeah, so maybe just learning, because then we know which precincts make up the city, so we can kind of say, okay, these precincts may be growing or shrinking or whatever it is, but maybe city population.
And there's only 4 cities, so that
Right.
should be pretty easy.
Yeah.
And on your first point too, I think, Steve, can you do trending as far as?
Yeah.
Shows a graph at least or something.
I don't have that, but I could probably put something together. We do capture it. It's on our website. We have voter registration totals by precinct, month over month. The first of each month is posted.
Right.
So if I took that and put that into some sort of
So we could pick a date
Spreadsheet, yeah.
saying this date.
Maybe the last 5 years of this census cycle might be good to see what the trend is.
and not to get too much into the, what's to come. But when you look at that census data from a few years ago and current registered voter totals, you will see where that growth pattern has come up. You'll see, what's the Shevlin West is now, there's more registered voters there than there were population 5 years ago. That looks weird, but you know why, things like that.
Yes.
One fun fact, I was looking through the numbers historically, and I used the year I got here, which was 89. And it was interesting that sisters Redmond and Bend have all gone up 5 times in size since that same time. I mean, very close to exactly. It's like, which surprised me because it's, you know, we think certain places are growing a lot more, but percentage one, you know, Redmond went from 7,000 or 8,000 to 30 some thousand. And it was interesting that after all that time, they're all up five times. It was not, it's kind of interesting. I don't know what the non-city population is on that, but.
That's the population of sisters.
So does anything that we're doing about these districts provide an incentive
In the city, fire district is huge.
Does the city of Sisters want to expand their boundaries faster, or does then want to? What are we going to create in terms of unintended consequences?
But I think, you know, expansion of their growth boundary, you know, and how long that takes and whatnot, that doesn't give a lot of solid information. Other than you're trying to extend the urban growth.
For now, that we got districts or not? Will districts make it go faster? I mean, I know how long it took last time, so.
Yeah, we're just at the beginning of our process that we've already planned, so I don't see this having any effect, and I don't think we can attract more people to Bend. They already know that Bend is the best, you know, and Deschutes County is the best, so. Yeah, it's a good question. I can say I don't think that will affect our process, but.
I don't have a clue, I'm just asking.
The challenge for the committee would be, then you're making an educated guess or speculating what the growth is going to be because of the expansion of a new growth boundary. And boy, there's so many things that impacts that, including how long it takes to get the urban growth boundary approved, the challenges that go into that, how long it takes to develop. Is it the developer is gonna say in one part of it, I'm gonna do this and it's gonna take me 10 years and those sorts of things. I would struggle to say that's gonna give us good information for what we're trying to do in the next 3 months.
I mean, I believe in part of the growth was putting sewers in Bend way back in the 80s. We weren't growing much before that. You sisters.
I remember our septic tanks.
We got all of them come online. I'm just getting sewers now. Already growing.
That's one nice thing about then looking at the census in 2030, is that will
After all of that.
provide, capture that and have more certainty in figures. Which could be a recommendation from this committee too, saying you need to do this again.
They add sewers.
Yeah. Do this again, 2031 or 32. Other data or information you think you want?
And once, I don't know if who would get it, but in other counties that do have the districts, how they dealt with the planning of this, you know, like what they factor in versus, you know, just to see how they thought about it, because it's always interesting to see how they came up with districts, if there's history for maybe it's the other clerks or when they resize them. I mean, I don't know if they resize them every, interesting to find out. I don't know.
We're not the first people that have ever had to do this, so it
Exactly.
makes sense
Yeah, it'd be interesting to.
find out what their pattern was and if it worked.
Lane County just went through this a couple of years back. When it went to votes, it went down to 75 to 25.
And in part because the committee that would recommended it was a split committee. I don't know if it was a 4-3 vote or whatnot, but that's usually a challenge. And if in that scenario, if this committee was split and the voters in May decided no, what happens then? Well, then they're all at large positions. That's the fault.
Which is what we have today, right?
Pardon?
That's how it is now.
Yeah.
That's de facto now.
Question on what others do or have done. There's such a distinction between the home rule type and the charter type counties. And the question is good, but information you read is probably more relevant to those that haven't gone to a home rule type county.
I think it would be good for the public to understand what the difference between those two things are, but most people don't. Right, so it might be, even if we're talking about it, we can say, this is the difference.
That's what I wrote down, because I figured that was my homework, to understand the difference, so.
Well, probably the League of Oregon Counties or the Association of Oregon Counties might have that information for us.
We can, in your first working group meeting, which is September 10th, one of the things we're starting off with is definition. So we can definitely add in definitions for home rule versus charter. And some of the data that you're requesting, staff has done a lot of research on trying to get data, and it's just really hard to find a lot of information on how other counties have operated or what they're doing. It's not readily available. So I've been taking a lot of notes, and we'll try to get as much of the information that you're requesting as possible. I think Neil talked about this earlier too. As far as requests go from committee members, if there's a majority of the committee members who are interested in looking at data, then we're happy to try to track that down as much as possible. But I think one of the conversations we've had a lot is, if there's one committee member interested in a certain data point, but not the majority of the commissioners, they're more than welcome to do the research on finding that data and bringing it to the group for consideration. If there's a majority of committee members interested in looking at additional data outside of the census block data, voter registration number data that we have on hand, staff will do their utmost best to be able to provide that data if it's a majority of the committee interested in looking at that as a consideration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I just want to raise with respect to letter C on the map drawing criteria, when we're talking about not unreasonably dividing communities of common interest in geographic boundaries. I think it'd be useful if we came to some consensus early on about how granular we want to get with some of the stuff. For example, when I think about this, I don't think it's going to matter a whole lot, if a particular sewer district or water district, and I could be wrong about this, water rights in Central Oregon are a big deal. So, that might be something that you want to look at, because given all the debates we've had around capping canals and all that sort of stuff. But I think of school districts, for example, as being something that is typically, is a little bit more granular, but represents, common interest. So I guess my request would be to have at least, an overlay of school district mapping that we can look at as part of this process. And maybe it goes further with some other special districts. I don't know. Just put it out there for discussion.
That's a really good point.
We'll give a tutorial. So Lee is on deck to give a really good thorough tutorial of our GIS mapping and all the layers. There are a lot of layers available on hand. So today at this meeting, we're looking at orientation and kind of big picture overview. And then for that first, what we call working meeting on September 10th, is to give you some visuals and hands-on training about what we have available, what we have on hand, come with precinct maps, come with precinct data, come with census data, and all the layers that we have available. And then if there's additional requests beyond that, I've taken notes on some of the bigger, 5-year data requests, which we have on hand. So those are something that we can put together, I think, pretty easily. But once you guys are able to see the GIS mapping, some of you are familiar with it. Some of you probably never even heard of GIS mapping. So once we do that tutorial, hands-on tutorial with Lee, being able to show all those different layers are added in, there's a lot of resources that we already have available for you guys to start working on. And then as you are having these group discussions and build out, if there's something that makes sense to add in that we don't have on hand, we can tell you what we have available for resources or how we could find that, if we can find that or get that to you. But I think school districts and some of those other layers you're talking about, we have that available to show.
Yes.
Is there any data on, or is there any way, maybe I can understand what a community of common interest is?
Court cases.
Well, that's your job.
Yeah, it's my job. Yeah, and it varies from state to state, but
What is it? What's that mean?
oh, it's in this last attempt with, when we got a new congressman, for the first time, the state of Oregon put together a map that didn't follow the Cascade Mountains. And so they carved out a good chunk of Deschutes County that went into Marion and Clackamas and others. And the argument that the Republicans raised, and it went to the Oregon Supreme Court saying that's not a community of interest and this has never happened before, et cetera. And they lost that argument. So it's a pretty broad definition of what an area of community interest is. But that case and others would where you go to get that definition.
So do we have 5 different communities of common interests that are common or uncommon to the other 4 districts?
Say that again.
I'm not sure what I'm saying, but is each one of these districts a community of common interest and there's different than the other 4 districts?
Not necessarily.
So they could all be the same common interest.
And it's more likely when you're in a county that there's
that large argument.
Yeah, but then you say, but you know, Redmond probably has a pretty strong community of interest. You know, Lapine's sisters, as you look at the different cities.
Well, I get that, but I don't know how to define it. I'm a literal person.
So I have a thought.
Yeah.
So as a design criteria, the way I see it, and having been on the commission, there's different problems, say, in South County regarding all the water, the lands down there in the high water table.
Right, yeah.
That was a problem that we don't have in Bend or we don't have in Sisters. I mean, it was a very specific problem that a lot of them had a lot of feeling about. And fire issues might be a similar one. There's a different, we've just seen a week of, there's an area out there was all affected, but so I see it kind of just as that's what other counties seem to have done when you look at their maps. They seem to have kind of put geographic areas, but that's what I see it as. I mean, I don't know if it's a hard rule, may not be.
I think the challenge is going to be, Ned, that about half the population lives in Bend. So if we're trying to have equal population districts, you can't really just draw a line around Sisters, right? It's not going to be enough folks. So I think that's the challenge of this committee. And I think we do need to think about what communities of common interest mean, because they can mean folks that all are in a school district or in a parks district or in a city. It could be folks who, that's why we kind of have stale census data, but there can be neighborhoods or folks that all are of a similar culture or age or whatever it is, living in a similar area. And it would be a disservice to them to divide that up into, 2 or 4 pie slices. So that's what we have to grapple with, I think, in thinking. The obvious ones are like cities and kind of geographic areas, but we can think differently about that too.
But it should be in the interest of all the commissioners of what's going on in all of the county, not just in selective areas. We're all one.
That's my same question, just because a commissioner from this district, he's responsible for the whole county, not just, he might know more people and more here, but he still answers for the whole. So it doesn't, common interest a little bit, but you're still responsible for the whole county, even because you're just from this district.
The districts, though, they're only accountable to those voters, right? So.
No, if you don't walk out for the whole county, you don't get reelected, even if you're from this district, because people are gonna say, hey, don't vote for that guy. He only worried about this. He didn't worry about everybody else. He was narrow-minded, only worried about this. He didn't worry about the whole county.
The whole county can't vote, right? That's the
Yeah, but people will
districts.
say, don't vote for that guy because he only cared about this. He didn't care about.
Wonder, maybe Tony can tell me how much folks in Lapine care if I tell them how to vote.
Well, no, you're missing it.
Right? I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, the reaction of the
People call
public.
it, hey, he's not a good politician. He don't care. It's just, that's the way people.
So if you're in one district's the only ones that vote for you? People in that district is the only ones that vote for that?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Vote, I've already probably spoken more than I thought I would, besides saying, hello, this is my name. But that word, the common interest that came from the state issued directive during redistricting this last time around. So I mean, it's a general term, yes, but that was supposed to be that consideration that Neil mentioned when drawing those new congressional and Senate and House district lines. Just because you're state senator, you don't live in his district, doesn't mean he doesn't represent all of Oregon. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have a say in the state house. He still gets that vote. The same would go with these commissioners. All 5 have an equal vote, regardless of where they're running from, who they're representing in their geographical area. They are representing Deschutes County as a whole. So think of it at a higher level, the comp being a state legislator. To me.
And the only folks who's could say state senator, for example, I'll just use a recent example. There was one state senator very upset about the transportation package, almost single-handedly derailed it, prevented it from happening, for whatever his reasons are. He lives in Clackamas County. I have no control over being able to vote for him. Only his voters who he was saying he was protecting can do that. So I want to be realistic. If we're saying only the people in the district can vote to them, ultimately that's who they're accountable to on the ballot. Whether we can run campaigns or try to convince those voters is one thing, but that is who they are accountable to in that district, right? I'm accountable to every voter in Bend. I'm at large. I have to think about that every time I'm making a decision, right? So I just want to be really clear. That's what we're working on here, is creating pockets of voters that those are the folks that will elect that commissioner, and ultimately who they'll be accountable on the ballot to, not politically accountable or socially accountable, but that's who will vote to say yes or no to those folks in that
So
district.
that makes this question about communities of common interest even more important, doesn't it?
So I just think it's one of the factors we consider. I'll give you an example. Neil was right about the Congressional District 5, that they put us with the valley and all the way up to southeast Portland. We have a lot more of a community of interest in terms of governmental issues with Jefferson and Crook County. We do a lot of things when we were planning what to do about our landfill future. We talked to them about, is there a way we could work together that? We don't talk to Southeast Portland about that, or an example, but that's a legal test that if you're just trying to do something that may work well, those help government be better, in my opinion, when you have the same people, working that way together. So, but I just see it as a criteria. That's my view of it.
And that was one of the arguments against drawing the map the way they did, but they didn't listen to that. They do it the way they wanted to draw it. It's just my opinion. I mean, people testified.
Yeah, exactly.
Saying that we don't have common interests,
but
we have common interests this way.
Yeah.
Well, it's, as I said, the Oregon Supreme Court has given definition of community of interest, and it's a pretty broad definition. So, but we can be, in your deliberations, more sensitive to that. That's something to consider. You should do your mapping. Absolutely. Lee, did you have anything to add?
No, I'm looking forward to giving a demo, so.
Okay, good.
What kind of things we can do and
Exciting.
visualize. Keep in mind, I guess, one helpful thing for me would be data. If we're in a meeting, I'll give a demo and we can have some stuff to start with, but then it would be helpful to know if you're thinking about types of data and what you'd like to see, that we can get a list of that and see if we have it or if we need to get it or get updated data. But I have quite a bit of, we have a decent repository here, so.
Okay, other questions or comments? So September 10th, bring your pencils, your slide rules, your computers.
Flip phones.
Yeah. Bring flip phones.
Can I just add one thing, just for those who may be watching online, just to talk about how the public comment process is going. I think you touched on that. We are going to have public comment. So at the beginning of each meeting, there will be a 15-minute public comment period. The committee can adjust that if it seems to work better at the end, but we just chose to start with at the beginning 15 minutes. So People from the public can come in, they can sign up, and they will have up to 3 minutes to provide public comment either on Zoom or in person to the committee. If there's 15 people signed up, then they each get 1 minute.
That's
So,
right. 15, they get 1 minute.
Yeah, so we
Can I
don't.
just ask, is that, because I know in the city of Redmond does that at the outset of every council meeting. Is that typical for county meetings today? Is that typical in Bend? You do it right at the outset?
We usually do it near the top of the meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
And the county commissioners do it that way as well. And the thought process was you guys would be able to hear the feedback from the community and then go into your discussions and take it as you would like. But I just wanted the community, the public to know going forward, starting September 10th, public comments will be available at every meeting for that 15-minute period. And expanding it beyond the 15 minutes is at the will of the chair, but we wanted to provide enough time for you guys actually to do your business. So that's that. So for anyone listening.
All right, everyone energized, excited about this? It will be interesting.
I want to congratulate the chair for getting us out of here. 14 minutes early already. It's gonna be tough for an encore when you do.
Later for some points, Neil.
I know.
It is.
It's